Good evening and welcome to this, another installment in the long-running series of candidate forums and debates organized and presented by the Southern Standard newspaper and public radio WCPI 91.3. This evening we're going to be featuring candidates for the U.S. House of Representatives, those that have accepted the invitation. Also for the Tennessee House of Representatives in District 43, and the seat currently occupied by Paul Sherrell. And then we'll be winding up with the Tennessee Senate 16th District race, Janice Bowling, the Republican and incumbent, and Sheila Younglove, the Democratic nominee and challenger. We're going to start this evening with a little education and voting primer by Susie Davenport, the Administrator of Elections for Warren County. Very experienced and very knowledgeable, and I'm going to have to say, and this is an editorial comment, very, very conscientious. I've often said that Warren County has some issues and there's room for improvement, but one thing is for sure, and that's that our elections are fair and as accurate as possible. So we're going to have Susie giving our voters a little update on some recent changes in the law and court rulings and how the election will be administered. We're joined this evening by our partner from the Southern Standard, Mr. James Clark, the editor. James, good to have you with us this evening.
Bill, it's good to be here as always and see the candidates here to tell us why we should vote for them in this upcoming November 3rd election.
You know, it's one of the virtues of the Southern Standard WCPI candidate forums in that the duly qualified candidates can come here, they can make their pitch for votes, they can answer questions entirely without any cost. So it's totally free. It is a voter education exercise by the Southern Standard and WCPI. And glad to say that we're being joined by WCS-TV, the Warren County School System's internal cable television outreach on BLTV Channel 180. Joe Harvey is the director, and he'll be operating the house sound and the audio feed for WCPI this evening. And speaking of WCPI, our station engineer and great volunteer back from the very earliest days of WCPI, Richard Myers, is at the controls for the radio production. The video will be streamed on WCS-TV in real time, channel 180 BLTV. If you don't have BLTV, you won't see it, but you can log on to YouTube or WCS-TV on the internet and pick up the video and audio at that point. We'll have more to say about the run of show for tonight's program and the event coming up next Monday night, October 12, when we'll have the candidates for McMinnville Mayor and Alderman on the stage here at Warren County High School. And speaking of the high school, we certainly want to thank Clark George, the executive principal here at Warren County High School, for making these arrangements and allowing us to use these facilities to make sure that we have the proper social distancing in this COVID environment. Let's go now to Susie Davenport. Susie, thank you so much. You are no stranger to these candidate forums. You've been with us several times. And we'd just like for you to give us an update on changes in election law, rules and regs, and what to expect. So take it away, Susie.
Thank you, Bill, and thank y'all for inviting me to participate in this. Forgive me, I'm a little bit allergy-ridden here. Not that that would happen around here, but you know how that is. I would like to say that today is, not just was, the last day to register to vote in the November election. If you don't have your registration done, if you have a Tennessee-issued ID with a signature on file with Homeland Security or the driver's license, you've still got till 11:59 p.m. to get registered. That can be done online at govotn.com. I think I say that in my sleep now. govotn.com. It's a very multi-purpose site that is presented by the state from Trey Hargett, Secretary of State's office, and there are numerous options there to assist the voters. In particular, today especially is your registration. You can go online, get registered. That'll be a timely registration. If you have to get it by mail, you need to have it postmarked today, and I'm not sure there's going to be anybody in the post office to get that done at this point. So you may have to go to govotetn.com. Another thing that we need to talk about at govotetn.com, as well as on our website, WarrenTNElections with an S.com, is absentee voting. There's a big lot of talk this time about absentee voting, paper ballots, by-mail voting. By-mail voting and absentee voting are two different animals. In Tennessee, we don't have by-mail voting. We have absentee voting. In Tennessee, in order to get a paper ballot, you must request it. It has to be providing your information. It has to be over your signature. Our office, as well as the other 94 offices in the state, are very particular about those. We're going to be checking who that is, if they're the same place they were, if their identifying information is the same. We are not going to, in Tennessee, mail out a ballot to every registered voter in Tennessee. There are states that are doing that, and that's not Tennessee. If you had 4 people registered at one address and 3 of them have moved, if they haven't changed their registration, those papers could go to that same address, and that one person that still lives at that address is on their honor to only send in that one. We don't have that in Tennessee. We have absentee by request ballots. And in Warren County, as in all the other 94 counties in the state, that number has gone up significantly this year, especially for this election. Our August election had a good increase in number, and this election has already more than doubled that. We have already received over 500 requests in Warren County. So there is a decent turnout for an absentee ballot request. My deputies are working very hard to make sure that those all are timely filed, timely mailed out. We are encouraging everyone, if you get an absentee ballot, please go ahead and request it. Get that in the mail to you, because it does come to you by mail, and get that back in the mail to us, because it must come by mail. It can come by U.S. Postal Service, by DHL, FedEx, UPS, any of the registered mailing services, but it must be returned by mail. So the sooner you get your request in, the sooner we mail you your ballot, and the sooner it gets back to you.
Okay, just put your finger on that point. Let's talk about the deadlines. What's the deadline, if you would repeat that, for requesting the absentee ballot, and what's the deadline for getting it submitted?
Your absentee ballot must be requested by, it can be up to the 27th of October, but you're pushing it. That is the absolute last time that it can be requested, because it does have to go out in the mail, and it has to be back to our office by the close of polls on November 3rd, Election Day. So that's a quick turnaround.
So received in hand at your office before the close, which is 7 p.m. On Election Day. Okay, Susie, let me ask you this. There's been a lot of discussion about the security of the mail-in or absentee, in our case we call it absentee, ballots. What kind of procedures do you have in the Warren County Election Administration Office? And I want to assume this is pretty much the same all over Tennessee. What kind of procedures do you have for verifying that this is a legitimate, registered, bona fide voter?
Well, as I said, we do. Whenever we get that request for the ballot, we're going to compare the name, we're going to compare the address, we're going to compare date of birth, social security number, and signature. If we have any questions about it, signature's mature. But there are everyone in my office has had some training in signature verification, And if we have any questions, we're going to compare with each other. You know, what do you think? Do you see? What do you think? And if there's any other question, we're going to request that voter to provide us with a signature on a recent identification so that we have an updated. When someone sends in a petition, when a candidate does a petition to get their signatures, to get their name on the ballot, we are going to check those signatures against our database. Any voter who has a quite different, a maturing signature, shall we say, we're going to send them a voter registration form asking them to provide us with an updated signature so that we stay current with them. You know, my 18-year-old signature is not the same as my signature a couple of years later.
Okay, and then that application for the absentee ballot, I assume, has a request for a telephone number and other contact information?
It does. We ask for a telephone number. We even ask for an email address. If we've got a question, we're going to contact that voter. We're not going to leave it to chance.
Okay. All right. I failed to mention, and I always fail on something, but we have the Southern Standard live streaming here this evening. I think we're going through Facebook. Is that right? Going through Facebook at southernstandard.com. And, of course, for the traditional print coverage, that will be, James, I'm assuming, in Wednesday's Southern Standard.
Wednesday's edition of the Standard.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Susie, one last question. We used to think of covering elections, and James and I have been through quite a few of them, so has Seth and a lot of journalists. But this may not be election night nationally. This may go on for a while, the counting. So how are we geared up in Warren County to count our ballots? Because we also have that very interesting McMinnville City Council election, the Board of Mayor and Alderman. So when can we expect results, and can you release results from the McMinnville Municipal elections separate from our counts in the state and federal?
No, our counts will come out pretty much the same as always. We'll normally have our early voting numbers before we'll have our precinct numbers, but they're all going to come out as they are tallied and presented. People think that we know how early voting's going, who's winning and what have you. We don't know that. Those aren't tallied until election evening anymore than they are the precincts.
That's a separate committee or board, the absentee counting board. That's a separate organization, right?
Those people they are chosen from citizens just like our other poll workers are. They have a little extra training and paper ballots and scanning card readers, that sort of thing. We have doubled the number of people on our absentee counting board this time. We'll have 4 teams rather than the 2 we normally have. So we are expecting a larger number. We did have the larger number, as I said, in August, and we will expect that to be a really good dress rehearsal for November so that we know what we're doing.
Okay, you sort of ramped up into it, right? Okay. Susie Davenport, thank you so much. I appreciate your being here, and the long hours you and your deputies and the poll workers spend getting ready for and then following up on our elections. So,
thank you. Thank you.
So thank you so much. One last thing very quickly, any changes in the polling places? I know my station in the 1st County Commission District is at Christ Community Church, moved out of the Civic Center during the remodeling. Any other changes?
Well, previous to this election year, we had 5 changes. The Civic Center was moved to Christ Community Church. The Bershba Towers was moved to the Chamber of Commerce building. Fairview Community Center was moved to the Shellsford Baptist Church. And then the Northside Baptist Church's precinct was moved to the Highway Department building right across the road. And we had a half a change in that we moved from one end of the mall to the other.
Okay. Well, again, Susie, thank you so much.
Okay. If anyone needs a sample ballot, they are on our website now, and they can just go to warrantyelections.com, or it was printed in the Southern Standard yesterday.
All right, very good. Thank you, Susie. Thank you. We appreciate your work and the Election Commission and all of those associated with making our elections run so efficiently. Seth Wright is our timekeeper this evening. He's an old hand at this. He's done this for several election cycles as the Southern Standard and WCPI have teamed up to do the election coverage. Seth has a new gadget. Seth, besides being a superb graphic artist, very talented and creative, he knows the latest in technology and he knows how to use it. So you have a new device for us this evening, Seth, and it's a vertical tube that will display different colors. So let's go ahead and get our next event up here. And that's the U.S. House of Representatives, Tennessee's 4th District, Scott DesJarlais, the Republican incumbent, versus Christopher Hale, the Democratic nominee and challenger. I think Mr. Hale is going up on the stage. You can take whatever table or microphone you like. Joe Harvey will find you. Okay. All right, Mr. Hale. And Scott DesJarlais. Do we have Congressman DesJarlais here? Okay. One more time. Scott DesJarlais. Well, James, it looks like we're going to have one contestant presenting this evening. And if you would, James, go over the time limits, and then when you do that, I want Seth to give us the audible signal on the big brass ship's bell here.
Okay, you doing all right, Mr. Hale?
It's great to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. Thanks for coming. You will be given 5 minutes to make your opening statement, and then do you have any questions, Mr. Zechman? I know I prepared a couple questions.
Well,
so.
I may have one or two based upon what Mr. Hale says in his opening remarks.
Okay. Yeah.
And maybe something from out of left field, who knows?
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and get started.
Then I have a couple questions that I'd like to ask, and then you'll be given time to make a close. So,
Well, number one, thank you for having, is this my opening statement time?
No.
Oh, sorry.
No, but Seth has that little light right there, and I think if you watch that, green means go. Seth, blue, is that what you're going to do when he's almost out of
Yellow.
Okay, then blue's the warning, and then red is stop.
Perfect. Well, number one, thank you so much for having me, and it's an honor to be here. I think you just saw the totality of Congressman DesJarlais' decade in office and what just happened. Bill Zechman called out, "Congressman DesJarlais, are you here?" And it was met with silence. For a decade, Congressman DesJarlais has answered silence to the question, "Are you here?" The question that we get time and again across this campaign, the campaign I've held 133 events across 16 counties and 250 communities across this state, is where is Congressman DesJarlais? He stood up Bill Zechman tonight, but more importantly, he stood you up. He stood Warren County up. During the greatest health and economic crisis in American history, in the biggest vote in front of him, in front of the United States Congress, a $3.2 trillion bill, the biggest bill in American history, 3 times bigger than the bailout that cost Congressman Davis his job a decade ago. Congressman DesJarlais also wasn't there. He was one of a handful of members of the United States Congress who did not vote on the biggest bill in American history. I'm different. I show up. I fight for my people. When I say I'm going to come to Bill's event, I come. When I say I'm going to be in a community, I'm there. I go to bar mitzvahs, I go to quinceaneras, I go to events, I go to town halls. Town halls, one that Congressman DesJarlais has yet to hold in this state in 7 years. World War II lasted less. World War I lasted less. Congressman DesJarlais doesn't show up. I'm a lifelong Tennessean. I'm a native Tennessean. I've spent my career in public service, in small business, and in advocacy. I know how to make a payroll. I know how to fulfill promises. I know how to show up for my people. And tonight, to everyone who's listening here, I want you to know this is an important night. Because tonight, for the first time in a decade, to every Republican, you are going to vote for a Democrat for the United States Congress. You are going to vote for a Democrat for the United States Congress because, unlike Scott Desjardins, I show up. Congressman Desjardins is not supported by more than a third of the Republican Party. There are Doug Meyer and Randy Sharp, Chris Hale voters. And you know what, Republicans? You can do better than Scott Desjardins. If you like conservative values, if you have conservative values, there are better champions of conservative values than Scott Desjardins. I'm sure Janice Bowling would love to be United States Congressman. She ran for this seat about 18 years ago, give or take. There's other folks in this community, Paul Sherrell, who might want to run for this seat. Maybe you should put them up instead, because Congressman Desjardins does not represent you. He does not represent the Christian conservative values that you care about. I'm a Christian. I'm a populist. I'm a Democrat. I'm not a socialist. I'm a Democrat who values bread and butter issues. I want to bring good jobs, living wages, rural hospitals, and health care back to rural Tennessee. I'm going to earn your vote. I'm going to win this election. And unlike my opponent, Congressman Scott Desjardins, I will show up and fight for you.
All right. Okay, Mr. Hale, thank you. Okay, your opening statement, you got that in less than 5 minutes, so maybe we owe you a minute or two here.
We'll take as much as you can.
We'll put it on the back end. James, if you have a question.
Sure, I've got several questions. Okay, Mr. Hale, being a newspaper guy, obviously I'm really big on freedom of speech.
Sure.
Absolutely. But freedom of expression is a right that's enjoyed by all Americans, but hate speech is slightly different, and it's often used to incite violence. What are your thoughts on possible regulations on hate speech, especially online, or your thoughts on if this should be regulated at all?
Look, I think the First Amendment, the United States Constitution that gives us the First Amendment, the Supreme Court has said there's a wide provision of the First Amendment. I'm a constitutional conservative. I believe in the First Amendment. We should have the ability to have people say things that offend us, that are repugnant, that go against every sensibility that we have as Christians, as Americans, but we have to defend their right to say it. Men and women, women and men, our ancestors fought and died for the ability of Americans to say stupid things and to say idiotic things. And I will defend that to the nth degree. I believe in liberty. I believe in freedom. I believe in the right to have a marketplace of free ideas and let those play out. That being said, Facebook is controlled by corporate Silicon Valley elites who are infiltrating and taking over our dialogue in a way that's not healthy for the citizens of this country. We can regulate what goes in the mail. We can regulate what goes on our television. I think we need to regulate the corporate leftists of Facebook. I think we should take them on. I wish Congressman Desjardins would take them on. I think we should break up Facebook. I think we should have smaller competitive platforms. I think we should use the antitrust laws of this country to ensure that we actually have freedom of speech, that we actually have a marketplace of ideas, that we aren't controlled by big data, that we aren't controlled by California liberals, that we have the ability to have a free marketplace of ideas, that where the best ideas win. And the way we do that is by ensuring that the marketplace is fair and accessible to all.
Okay, James, you got another one? I'll have one if you need a little break. Or just go ahead with your question, Joe.
Okay, question 2. The federal government has largely taken a hands-off approach when it comes to COVID-19 regulations, deferring action to each individual state. Do you think the federal government has done enough to mitigate the spread of COVID-19?
No. The positivity rate in Grundy County today is 1 in 4. Janice Bowling and I were in Grundy County this weekend in Colmont for an event, the unveiling of markers. There were some wearing masks, thank God. Not all were. Some should have been wearing masks. But the thing that we need to do, we're talking so much about mandates. What we need to talk about is accessibility. The issue that I have talked to about Tennesseans is a surprising number of Tennesseans do not have access to masks. The United States Postal Office, thank God for the thousands of postal workers here in Tennessee. The United States Post Office in April was going to deliver 5 masks to every citizen of this country. I'm pro-life. I think citizens should have masks. I think masks should be available to each and every citizen. So instead of talking about mandates, we need to talk about access to resources. The government told you and your businesses right here in Warren County to shut down. And thank God we had the PPP loan. The PPP loan that Congressman Desjardins did not support. The PPP loan that in the middle of March when he opposed, that the President of the United States said the men who opposed that bill were third-rate stooges. I agree with President Trump. Scott Desjardins is a third-rate stooge. We need to ensure that resources are given to our people. We need a second PPP loan. We need to help pay for social distancing measures in businesses, and a new PPP loan should pay for that. Businesses have spent so much money abiding by the regulations of the federal government. We need to give them the resources to do so. I believe in freedom. I believe in capitalism. But when the government shuts you down, the government should pay the cost of shutting you down.
Okay. I'll tell you what, I think James may have another question, but...
Go ahead.
Okay, if you've got another one, let me go ahead and get this in. 5 minutes is a terribly short time for a candidate for Congress to lay out his or her platform and agenda, but let's take a look at what is registering as the most important issues for American voters going into this November 2020 election. The Gallup organization, highly respected and experienced, did the polling on that. And they asked respondents, is this issue extremely important to you, or is it very important to you? And they drew that distinction, a little line of demarcation between the two. But then they combined the responses for extremely important with very important. So you have the top 2 responses in terms of intensity. Number 1, when you do that combination with 84% responding extremely important or very important, 84% said the economy falls in that category, but is followed closely, right on the heels of that, by education, 83%. After that comes healthcare, 81%. And then in 4th place, with 80%, terrorism and national security. So right now, if you combine extremely important and very important, the economy is the key issue, but right after that is education. Can you take just a few seconds and talk to us about your agenda for education?
Well, number 1, we need to fully fund public schools. It is absurdity. A lot of people have opinions about their local school boards, rightly so.
Yeah, they do, yes.
And
they do
let
indeed.
me be on the record. There are some crazy people who are elected to local school boards, and we know them by name. I've met them in the flesh. But school boards are having impossible decisions to make in terms of reopening schools safely because the government has not provided resources for them to open safely. Once again, the government has put guidelines in place for how schools ought to open. The government has not provided the security for teachers in the workplace. The government should foot the bill. Public schools are a creation of the community. We pay for public schools. Public dollars should pay for public education. But you know what? It can't simply be the state, local communities. Property taxes are not a worthwhile and long sustainable means of funding public schools. The federal government is a great means of public school funding. I even think Janice Bowling would agree with me on that. We can't put all the pressure on the state and local municipalities to ensure that public schools are funded. The federal government has got to step up. But I want to note that you've raised 3 issues: the economy, healthcare, and education. COVID-19 has killed 2,300 Tennesseans, but it has cost thousands and tens of thousands of Tennessee jobs. It destroyed lives and livelihoods. For 70 days, Congressman Desjardins knew this virus was coming to destroy our lives and our livelihoods. He did nothing to stop it. And after the virus came, as President Trump agreed, he did little to help us. I will help defeat this virus. I will ensure we get our kids back to schools, that we can pray safely in our churches, and that our communities and our jobs are back here in Tennessee.
Okay, thank you, James. Back to you.
Okay, I have one more question, and it's about gun control. We were talking over to the side before this started about how some good things have emerged from this pandemic, and I guess one good thing is not so many people are getting gunned down in the streets the way they used to be, so there's that. But there has been talk about the federal government buying back some assault weapons. What are your views on this?
So to me, any law-abiding Tennessean should be able to own a gun, should be able to own a gun. I'm not here to steal your guns. I'm here to give you good jobs. I'm not here to take away your guns. I'm here to give good jobs in education, healthcare, and living wages. The only people who should not have guns in Tennessee are people like Scott Desjardins. Scott Desjardins admitted in a court of law that he abused his wife with a gun. He abused his wife with a gun. He threatened her with a gun. He dry fired it 6 feet from her head. He stuck it in his mouth for 3 hours. He threatened to take his life, and then he was belligerent to the police in Marion County. Under Chris Hale's America, law-abiding citizens, law-abiding Tennesseans can have guns. Domestic abusers cannot. I think law-abiding citizens should own guns, but those who threaten their wives, who don't know how to use guns properly, should not. That's why tens of thousands of Trump Hale voters are across Tennessee voting for me, because they know that I'm a different type of Democrat. I'm not controlled by Nancy Pelosi or Joe Biden. I'm controlled by the values of you and your family. Congressman Desjardins is not. I'm a Christian, pro-life, a political outsider who believes that the values of Tennessee should be the values we take to Washington. Congressman Desjardins from South Dakota is not like us.
Just one real quick follow-up on the gun issue. Do you make a distinction between guns in general and fully automatic guns?
So to me, once again, law-abiding citizens should be able to own guns. I think the first thing we need to talk about, though, is background checks and ensuring those who do not abide by the rule of law do not have guns. I'm a law and order Democrat, folks. I believe in law and order. I think that we should impose the laws in the books, and we have not done that well. I think the laws in the books should ensure that criminals do not have weapons, but I also think that we need to make sure we have the background checks in place to ensure criminals do not have weapons. There are thousands of criminals in our streets, thugs who have guns in Tennessee who should not have guns because our government does not implement the laws on the books. We cannot get caught up in the thick of thin things. Let's get back to basics. Let's ensure that law and order is the rule of the law, is the practice of here in Tennessee, and the way we do that is implement background checks to ensure criminals and domestic abusers like Congressman Desjardins do not have guns.
Okay, James, do you have anything else?
No, I think that does it for me.
Well, thank you, Chris Hale. Thank you so much. Let's go to your 2-minute closing statement.
I'm a fighter. I'm a fighter who tells the truth. I'm a fighter who's not beholden to the old ways of doing things. I'm a young man who has energy, who has charisma, has the mind, the intellect, the heart, the competence, and the courage to win this seat. We have nearly 6,000 donors. We outraised Congressman Desjardins by a 5-to-1 margin, and that was fueled by the average donation of $32, but we out-organized him 100-to-1. I'm going to end this campaign like I lived my life, on the road, close to you and your families, seeking converts, and fighting for those who have been left out of the political system altogether. There are 249 precincts in this congressional district. I'm stepping foot in all of them. A young man named Lamar Alexander was a Republican running in one of the most democratic states in this country. And he walked from Mountain City to Memphis as a man in his 30s and became the youngest elected governor of this state. I am going to do the same. I am going to walk from Colioca to Spring City, and I am going to win over each and every Republican I encounter. The establishment is terrified of me, but you know what? In the office of the Rutherford County Republican Party, there isn't a Scott Desjardins sign. There's a hell yes sign, because the people who know me, even the Republicans who know me, they admire my fight. They admire my energy. They know that I will fight for them. I am not beholden to Joe Biden or Donald Trump or Nancy Pelosi or Kevin McCarthy. I am only beholden to you and your family. So folks, I promise you at the beginning, every Republican in this room, I'm going to win your vote because you know what? I show up and Congressman Desjardins does not. In 29 days, through the grace of God and through the means of a free and fair election, you are looking at your next congressman. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris Hale. Thank you very much. And we're running pretty close to schedule here. Seth, we haven't had anybody to go over their allotted time, have we? You haven't got to ring the bell. Okay. All right. Let's go now to the Tennessee House of Representatives, District 43. Paul Sherrell is the Republican incumbent, and I know Mr. Sherrell is here. If he'd go ahead and sit at any one of those tables, might make it a little easier for the camera operator if you sit in the middle. And Luke Cameron, the independent. There was no Democrat who qualified for the District 43 race, so we're calling for Luke Cameron. Mr. Luke Cameron, are you in the House? Mr. Cameron, third time. Okay, we're not hearing from Luke Cameron, so the time is yours, Mr. Sherrell. Mr. Sherrell, give us, before you start, give us a 30-second background on your family. I really mean 30 seconds, and how you got your start in politics.
Do I need to take this off or leave
Well,
it on?
we're distance. We're a
Okay.
good 20 feet apart here. Yeah, you're good.
I'll take it off. Thank you very much to be here this evening. I am State Representative Paul Sherrell. I live over at Sparta, White County, and it is an honor to be here this evening. My family is not able to be with me here tonight. They are tied up in other things going on, but anyway, we want to say we appreciate our family and all their help in White County. I used to be a police officer over in Sparta, White County, so we're just glad to be here this evening.
Okay, very good. We just want a little personal introduction now. According to the rules of the forum, you have 5 minutes wide open, and then we're going to go to some questions. So, Seth, if you would start Representative Sherrell's 5 minutes. All right, ready for you.
Thank you again for being here this evening and tonight. We appreciate it. And, you know, as we come together here in my life, I want to say I always want to thank God and I want to praise God for the opportunity to be in this position that God's allowed me to be as a state representative in the 43rd District and having the opportunity to be a candidate again here in the year of 2020. It's been an honor, and I always thank my family and friends always as we go through life, and I always want to try to thank the people in the 43rd District of Grundy, Warren. About 2/3 of Warren is the 43rd District, and of course Grundy, Warren, and White County has been very great to me, and we was just blessed to get through the primary and back in August, and Warren County was really great to me this year, and as well as Grundy County, and we had a little tough time over in White County, but we still won White County. We had a couple of guys that run against me this time, and but the good Lord blessed us, and we're just great to do that. I was first elected in 2016. Never dreamed that I would be in this position as a state representative. I know where I come from, but I was elected in 2016. I feel like this is what God wants me to be doing in my time of life, and it's been a great blessing. It's been an honor, and to be a representative and hopefully try to do what we need to do as a representative in the 43rd District. I am a Republican. I've always been a Republican, and I'm running on the Republican platform. And I know things has changed a lot. I've had a lot of folks that has told me in my time out running, since we have seen things change in Washington, D.C., as President Trump run first time in 2016, a lot of people has told me that they've been a Democrat all their life and they are running as a Republican, or they are running, or they are voting Republican. It's changed a lot since Donald Trump has become our president. And I think he has done a great job for our country, and I definitely want to support him and stand up for him. Just a few things I just want to share with you in my 5 minutes opening here that, like I said, I used to be a police officer over in Sparta, and of course I'm not a career politician, but I value my Christian values that we try to take to Nashville and stand for as the way we vote on issues, conservative morals, very important to the people in the 43rd District. Yes, we do represent Grundy, Warren, White County for economical growth. We want to see great growth in the state of Tennessee, and we had the opportunity to go to Nashville and trying to work for to help Motlow today, meeting with some of the folks down there. So we try to do that the best we can. I must strongly believe in the Second Amendment. I want to let you know that we need to protect the people that does have weapons. As long as they are obeying the law, we want to try to protect them. I'm a member of the NRA, member of the Tennessee Firearms Association. It's something that we stand for strongly. And I understand that according to the Bible, life starts at conception. That is something very important in my belief and how I stand. And I believe that marriage is between a man and a woman according to the Bible, period. So, things like this that we support. I like to, and trying to support our teachers, our children, and our support staff that's in our educational system. We want to try to support them the best we can. I do oppose tax increases, and I know sometimes there is tax increases that has to come about, but we try to oppose things that comes down from the government that mandates more taxes. I try my best to represent our farmers that provide our resources, and we definitely want to try to take care of them, and especially here we have a lot. Try to assist our veterans, in their needs out in that world. And I support our law enforcement, and definitely we need them in our time of day. And I strongly believe in the Constitution that our forefathers has fought for.
Okay, Mr. Sherrell, thank you. And just for the record and for our WCS-TV and the Southern Standard and YouTube audience and FM radio listeners on WCPI 91.3, this is the Southern Standard WCPI Candidate Forum in the lead up to the November 2020 voting. And we're listening to, this segment was devoted to the Tennessee House of Representatives 43rd District, and the incumbent and Republican Paul Sherrell is on the stage. His challenger, Luke Cameron, who qualified as an independent, is apparently not in the House this evening. So, James, let's go ahead and go to that question and answer session.
All right, I have a few questions here for Mr. Sherrell. Thanks to the federal COVID stimulus money, the Tennessee economy has been respectable during the pandemic. Are you expecting a downturn? And if so, what are some things the state can do to tighten its belt when the federal stimulus money dries up?
Well, I believe that talking about the virus, we'll say that I believe our governor, Bill Lee, has done a great job from being the governor of trying to do what needs to be done to protect our people in the state of Tennessee as far as this virus it's about. Is there things that could be done better or things that could be done in a different way that could better us? I'm sure they are. Money-wise, I don't know exactly how much more money that might come down, say, from the federal government. I have no idea about that. But I think that in the great state of Tennessee, we as Republicans in the House and in the Senate, we have tried to spend the money of the people in the state of Tennessee in a very wisely way, trying to create jobs and trying to keep us safe in our daily walks of life. So I guess we'll see how this virus takes place, and I believe that we are on a, hopefully, this thing hopefully will go away. So.
Okay. This is about school vouchers. The General Assembly approved the limited school voucher program that would allow students in Shelby and Davidson County to have personal education savings accounts so they could spend tax dollars on private schools if that's something that they wanted to do. Do you agree with the concept of school vouchers and using tax dollars for private education?
Well, let me say this way. I'm a firm believer that whatever we need to do to spend the people's money of the great state of Tennessee in a wisely way to help get our children a good education, I believe we need to spend the money in that way. Now, what is the best way? Public education is very great. I went to White County schools, and we have great schools in White County. Warren County has great schools. Got you a new superintendent of schools down here. Come from White County, and he's a great guy, and I sure do hope y'all have great success with him down here with the school system. Vouchers, as you was talking about there, if they would help somebody to get a better education, I think that we can try them. That was something that took place, and that did not take money out of the counties. That is something that's some of the people has stated that it takes money out of the counties, raises your tax dollars. That does not. It does not take money from the public education. That is money that was set aside to try to help some of our people that don't get a good education like you do or I did, to help them try to further themselves in life. We see people out here that needs help to get an education, and we need to try to help them if we can. It's either we try to help them in the front end of trying to get an education, or as they come down through life, if they don't have a good education, where do they end up at? Usually in jail or in prison or somewhere like that. If we don't help these people some way to get an education, we're going to feed them somewhere in jail or in prison. So we got to take care of them.
James, let me ask a real quick follow-up. Just to make sure, for the sake of clarity, early on in the discussion of the school vouchers, one version had it that the local county or city share of the student's total earmark out of taxes, local taxes, would follow a student if that student went into a charter school or a private school. And I think if I heard you correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, that is not in the current legislation. So the county taxes would not follow that student into a charter school. Is that right?
To my understanding, to the best of my understanding about what happened in the school vouchers, there was money that was set aside to try to help these folks that don't get a good education like you or I have. So we need to try to help these people. We've got to. And it is money that was set aside. Now, that money that was set aside, because of the way the courts ruled, that money was taken back out of that place of funding and put back into the general fund to the best of my understanding. I believe it is right. So yes, there was money, and yes, it was your tax dollars and my tax dollars.
But from local sources. Let's make a distinction between the state, the BEP money, and the local contribution.
Not to my knowledge, there was none of the county's money put into it. It was the state's money, but yes, it was your tax dollars and my tax dollars
through the state treasurer.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Basically, the sales tax.
Yeah.
Retail sales tax. Okay. James, anything else?
I just have one more question, if you'd be okay to answer it. You kind of talked about feed them now or feed them in jail, feed them one way or the other. And I know Governor Lee, one of the centerpieces that he had this legislative session, he really wanted to push criminal justice reform. I know that kind of got derailed. There was COVID, the session got interrupted, and it didn't follow through. But in your mind, what kind of, do you see anything? How do you see the criminal justice system reforming? How would you like it to change, if at all?
Well, I believe that Governor Lee has a good ideal and things that he is wanting to try to implement into the great state of Tennessee. And does Governor Lee do everything right? No. Do we do everything right? No. But I believe that Governor Lee is a good Christian man, and I believe he wants to see people do good in life. He wants to see people get a good education. He is just like, for instance, TCAT over here, Motlow. He wants to see our students go to these places so they'll get a good education and go further in life. And again, I say this. We have people, I was a police officer, and I'm telling you that if we don't help these people, now we get a good education here in Warren County or White County or Grundy County, but you take Davidson County, Shelby County, and some of these other counties, some of these students don't get a good education, right? So where are they at? They either grandma's got them or somebody else is raising these children. So we got to do something to try to help some of these students get a good education. How's the best way to do it? If we educate them, try to educate them up front, hopefully they'll go through life and become productive, paying taxes and spending their money in a wisely way. If we don't get them a good education up front, more likely, I'm telling you, they're going to be at the jail, they're going to be on the welfare, soup line or something. Education is very critical in our society today.
Okay, James, anything else?
No, I think that does it for me.
Okay, one last question, Representative Sherrell, before we go to your 2-minute closing statement. You've been, as you said, in the Tennessee House of Representatives from the election of 2016 down to the present time. In that time, what would you consider to be your most important piece of legislation that you introduced, or the most consequential or the most enduring in effect? What's the most important legislation you sponsored?
Well, I'm going to say the first bill that I was able to carry in the House when I went down there, and that is to help our volunteer fire departments, men and women, and our rescue squad. That entitled them to get a license plate at no cost. I think that was my first greatest thing, and yes, we need to try to help these people like that because they don't get paid anything to go out here and do what they do for you and I and the people in a great state of Tennessee. So I feel like that was just one little bill that I feel like was great importance, and I hope we can do more to help our volunteers that's out there working for us. And there is some new bills that has in the works of coming through in this past session to try to help more in the people that's out there volunteering. Of course, everything was going good until the virus hit, and then it just seemed like everything just went sort of crazy. So hopefully, I'm hoping that this virus will go away, hope, and then in the new coming year that we'll be able to go back and try to work on legislation that will help each and every one of us in the great state of Tennessee.
Well, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic certainly knocked us sideways in more ways than one. Of course, one of them was the state tax revenues, since our state is heavily dependent on sales tax, retail sales tax, and business tax. Governor Lee had, I don't know whether you call it a promise, but had definitely talked very seriously about a significant pay raise for Tennessee's teachers. That got taken out of the equation when the administration and the legislature had to do some budget revisions because of the expected shortfall that really didn't turn out to be quite as bad as we expected, but there was no way to know that on the front end. What about doing something for the teachers in the next legislative session in 2021? What would you do for the teachers?
Well, I hope that in the upcoming session that there will be some bills that will hopefully try to help our teachers more financially in whatever way they need to do a better job teaching. And we have great teachers in the great state of Tennessee. You know, I'm glad that I live in Tennessee. And, you know, thinking about Tennessee, our budget in Tennessee is in good shape compared to a lot of states. I've got a little list here, just like this 2021 budget's $40,000.5 billion for the 2021. So we spent a lot of money. We put a lot of money in education this year, and we hopefully will put more money in education. For instance, we put in money to fully fund the BEP, and hopefully that there'll be more money to come out this coming session to help our teachers. A big expense, okay, education was $11.5 billion was put in for the 2021 budget. The biggest thing was TennCare, which was $19.9 million. And then social services was $5.6 billion, transportation $2.3 billion, corrections $1.1 billion, and that's just a few of the ones there just to tell you.
I don't want to cut you short, but
Yeah.
I guess at the end of the day, the question is, would you sponsor or co-sponsor legislation to increase teacher pay in Tennessee?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Public education is very needed, and we got to have it. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, James, let's go to the 2-minute close, and we will be in great shape to start the next feature, which will be the 16th District Tennessee Senate. So, Representative Sherrell, take your 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you again for the opportunity to be here this evening. An honor. I've tried to be here every time I've been asked to come and be a part of it, and since 2016 that James Clark has called and asked me to come and be a part, or you, Bill, has asked me to come and be a part of this, and I've been blessed ever since 2016 and to be able to be here, and it is an honor, and I think it is something that we should try to do to try to let the people know a little bit how we stand in issues, and we're always glad that we can take that opportunity. You know, I just think about, and since this virus is taking place, probably the biggest issue that I have encountered is people that have lost their job, they're on unemployment, and hopefully things are in the going up, that unemployment's going down. And I've tried to let people know that if they are having an unemployment issue, and that has been a very hot situation. We've had, I could probably go home and tell you probably 1,000 people has called my home asking for help with unemployment, or they've called the Nashville office asking for help with unemployment. And I've tried my best to be available to help these people because I know it's important. I've given my phone number out, and I will give it out again to try to help people with their unemployment needs or whatever need you might have out there. So we want to be available to the people. We want to try to be where people want us to be at. And right here tonight, I want people to know, of course, my office number is 615-741-1963. And my home number is in the phone book, and it's 931-935-8488. We want to help you. And as always, as we go about in society trying to get reelected, we ask for your prayer, support, and vote November the 3rd.
Well, thank you very much, Representative Paul Sherrell from White County. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. Okay, James, we're right at 7 o'clock. For those who are tuned in to the live telecast and broadcast on 91.3 Public Radio WCPI, WCS-TV, cable television outreach service, and internet outreach service of the Warren County Schools by YouTube and by the Southern Standard Facebook feed. Good to have you all with us. Seth Wright is our trusty timekeeper, and I'm here partnering with James Clark, editor of the Southern Standard. Since we are at 7 o'clock, I do need to remind our radio listeners that this is WCPI at 91.3, broadcasting from McMinnville, Tennessee. So we're continuing, and we have actually gained a little bit of time. So let's go now to the Tennessee Senate 16th District. And this time, Seth, we're going to have both contestants here for the first time this evening. So we're going to have quite a feature with these contestants. They will be given 5 minutes for an opening statement, 2 minutes for closing statements. And then I think, James, we're going to let them ask each other questions, and we'll sit on the sidelines. Is that right?
I think we can ask a question too, can't we?
Well, sure.
Okay, and then they can ask each other questions.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay. We need Senator Bowling, and also we need Sheila Younglove, the Democratic nominee. All right, once again, the ground rules, 5 minutes for an opening statement, 2 minutes for a closing statement, and sandwiched in between, we'll have questions from James, and we're going to ask the two candidates to ask questions of each other. So are we ready to go with the timer? And we're going to go in alphabetical order here, which would put Janice Bowling first. And Senator Bowling, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here in Warren County.
Good to have you here, and you've always been very gracious and cooperative in participating in these candidate forums, so we thank you for that.
You and I have had a long relationship. I'm your favorite Republican, and you're my favorite socialist.
Okay. All right. We got that out of the way. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and start the timer, if you would. Senator Bowling, 5 minutes for your opening statement, please.
Thank you. I want to thank you again, Southern Standard and WCPI, for doing this. This is the first official campaign incident that we've had. This is my first time. I haven't really met her yet, but in order to meet, how do you do? And this is our first time to meet. So thank you very much for facilitating that. And I'll be very brief. I'm just going to tell you a little story about me, because you've asked for us to kind of explain who we are and talk to the people about who we are. And it can start easily by me saying one time Temple was up in Nashville with me, and the comptroller came up and said to Temple, Mr. Bowling, what does it feel like to have your wife as your state senator? And he looked at him and said, well, I'm just glad to know that I've got a normal person as my state senator. And so to say how normal I am, I grew up in a small town, went to a rural junior high school, and 4-H and all the things that are typical there in the rural high school. Then in high school, I was involved in the Spanish Club and National Honor Society and Future Teachers of America. And then I was really honored to have won a Rotary Scholarship to Mexico for the Spanish Scholarship. So I traveled, and that was a long way for someone right out of high school to take off without family for the first time. Then went to Auburn University, where I met who would be my husband, Temple Bowling, who's glad I'm a normal person. And we had very typical at that time. Vietnam was going on. He was in the Air Force. I was in Angel Flight. And when we graduated, we were married right after graduation and just celebrated our 51st wedding anniversary this past August. And after graduation, though, Temple stayed on to get his master's degree, and I taught special education in a rural county high school. And learned a lot. Along the way, all of these kinds of incidents and all of these kinds of life experiences, I think the Lord was preparing me for a type of public service. And so once we got out of the Air Force, out of graduate school rather, he was straight into the Air Force as a second lieutenant, and we went to Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. And that's when I found out that California consists of people who started on the East Coast and didn't fit in. They moved a little further west and still didn't fit in. They kept moving, and finally, they ended up in California against the Pacific Ocean. They could go no further, and they multiplied. So those are folks that are just kind of unique in their own out in California. But our first son was born in California. Then we came to Arnold Engineering Development Complex, where Temple has been in purchasing. And he had a 37-year career there and was the director of purchasing for Arnold Engineering and Development Complex. Then after that, it was time for us to move. We determined we had fallen in love with Tennessee, its values, its people, its take care, its volunteer spirit. And so his dad had been a fighter pilot in World War II. Temple said he'd already put in his 30 years before he started. So we got out in Tullahoma and made Tullahoma our home. We raised our children in Tullahoma, and our daughter and our younger son were born there. And our older son and our younger son are married, and we have 7 wonderful grandchildren, and the kids are doing well, so life is good. And life was really good, and Temple knew that while I was there in Tullahoma, I was an alderman for 15 years and a mayor pro tem. That, too, helped me to see what it's like to be associated with state government, but from the municipal side. And then when someone came along and asked if I would help in a congressional race with Congressman Van Hillary in the old 4th District, I helped in that race, then was asked to stay on and be the district director and became, well, a field representative and then became a district director. So I saw the sausage made from the city side and the sausage made from the federal side, so to speak. After that, Temple retired. Life was good. We were looking forward to a normal retirement. And then friends started saying, Janice, we need you to run for this state Senate race. Our country at that time was being subjected to a lot of things that were so different from what we had had. And they felt like it would be important for someone who had the experience to go to Nashville. I went to Nashville. I was elected by a district that on paper is a Democrat seat. But this district is a God-fearing, flag-waving, freedom-loving people. And the people voted their values. And I was very grateful for that because I won with about 65% of the vote when people voted their values. And that's what's so important now, that people don't look at the party lines. Even in Nashville, I have reached across the aisle many times when it makes sense and when it's something that's good for the state of Tennessee and good for people of Tennessee. So now I am Deputy Speaker.
Well, I think we'll let you finish your sentence at least.
A Deputy Speaker, and my young granddaughter read that in the newspaper. I told her parents, and she said, Nana, I'm so proud you have made history. The newspaper article said you made history. You're the first woman Deputy Speaker of Tennessee. So I'm honored to serve you in that capacity and honored to serve you as your state senator. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go over now to Sheila Younglove, and you'll have 5 minutes for your opening statement. Then we're going to come back with the questions, and then, of course, the last event will be your 2-minute closing.
Thank you.
All right.
It's nice to meet you, Senator
Very
Bowling.
nice to meet you.
And I hope you will join me on the 13th for a debate in Winchester.
I have not heard anything about that, except someone said you challenged me, but I'd never heard from
We sent it to
you.
your office.
No,
Yes, ma'am, we mailed it to your office mid-September.
no.
So I hope you will join me. I would love for you to be there.
Well, I'll have to check my calendar because
Okay.
this is the first I have known about it, and
Okay.
it, to my knowledge, did not go to my office. If you send it snail mail to my political office, it takes sometimes a long time, and sometimes they check the mail. But thank you for the offer.
Yes, ma'am, indeed. I am a political newcomer. I am an attorney. I became an attorney later in my life. I was a paralegal for 40 years, and I've raised 2 wonderful young men. I know a lot of people here. I grew up with Jana Wilson Ringman. We used to ride horses at her grandparents' farm. Had a lot of fun doing that, especially since Jana knew I didn't really know much about horses, and I appreciate that friendship that we had as children. For those of you who don't really know me, I am not a Tennessee native. I came here from Flint, Michigan. Both of my parents died by the time I was 8 years old, and I was sent down here to live with an aunt and uncle who I had only met twice in my entire life. As you can imagine, that was hard. I was separated from my other siblings, and I gained 3 brothers. They're wonderful, and I don't know what I would do without them and their wives and their children. But I had to adapt and adjust, and I had to do it quickly. First of all, I had to lose my northern brogue, as I was always told. People say, you talk like a Yankee, so I had to lose that real quick or I'd be hurting. I grew up in McMinnville. I went to school here, went to the public schools, graduated from Warren County High School in 1980, one of our last great years in football here. Hopefully we'll have another. But I want you all to know that I do think of McMinnville as home. I barely remember Flint, Michigan. It was not home to me. I felt like I was born at 8 years old. So I did come here. I adapted, I adjusted, I grew up here. I later got married, and I had a son, and I always wanted 2 children. I'm the youngest of 8, and I knew I couldn't handle 8 kids. Who would, yeah. But I knew I always wanted another one, but I could never imagine the way that would play out and how history would repeat itself. I got my second son he was at the age of 16. So that saved me a lot of years of toil, but I was blessed. And the funny thing is, he immigrated to this country when he was 8 years old. And I got him when he was 16 and helped him become a legal citizen of this country because he had no choice at 8 years old. And I've seen the struggles he goes through, the racial slurs that he endures, things I've never had to endure. And it has hurt my heart to watch that. But I've had both of my sons support all the way, and I couldn't make it without them. 2019 and 2020 have been difficult years, I think, for everybody for, one or many reasons. And I want to be your next senator because even though I'm an attorney and I help people in family law, I think I can take that to a statewide level, actually, particularly for District 16. I do want to implement Medicaid expansion for our district to provide 300,000 Tennesseans with insurance, the working poor, so that they can have insurance, and about 89,000 veterans. I also want us to properly fund our public schools. Tennessee is 46th in the nation on per student funding. That is a disgrace. We can do better, and I want us to do better. And I will reach across the aisle, and I will work with those who are willing to work with me to make sure that we properly fund our schools, we properly pay our teachers. We're losing new teachers after 2.5 to 3 years of being in the profession, and that's so sad. We need good teachers, and the way you retain good teachers is you pay them properly so they can afford to do the profession for which they were trained and for which they're paying off their student loans. You all might have seen the video on Facebook the other day of a local teacher, Dana Mulliken. It was heartbreaking, and she described what she's going through. So I hope that you all will vote for me and help me bring some of this to pass. Thank you.
Okay, you just heard from Sheila Younglove, and just prior to that, the incumbent state senator, Janice Bowling. And James, do you have some questions?
Yeah, I think I can probably round up a couple questions. Ms. Younglove talked about it. I guess we'll start with Janice first, and then we'll flip the order for the next one. How does that sound? Yeah, Ms. Younglove talked about education, and I asked this question to Mr. Sherrell as well. The school vouchers, what are your thoughts on school vouchers in Tennessee? Is it taking money away from public education, or is it using money to the best interest of the students?
I truly believe that is using money to the best interest of the student, and this is why in the state of Tennessee our budget is $40.5 billion. Our first item on our budget is $12.9 billion for Medicaid. That's something we have to do. It's a mandate for the people who fit into the categories that get the free health care, and that is Tennessee's portion. And just by the way, most states, when they expanded Medicaid, are getting up to 22 or 23% of their budget for expanded Medicaid. Tennessee pays over 33% right now for Medicaid. But education is our number one priority in the appropriations that we do as a state. And we appropriate $11.8 billion for 975,000 children in the state of Tennessee. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money that probably could be spent wiser. The BEP has some really good points. There's some things that may be needed to be updated. But in education, in Shelby County and in Davidson County, there are children in these schools that are operating at the lowest 1% of state education. And not only is it not educating the children, many times there's also a lot of violence associated with these schools. The parents that qualify for the vouchers are people who are working people who can't afford a private education for their children, but they know that not only are their children not getting educated, they are in danger even for physical violence. These parents deserve that opportunity. Any parent who wants to take the initiative to be involved in their child's education should be able to have this voucher.
James, you want to put that question to Ms. Younglove?
Yes, absolutely. Ms. Younglove, your thoughts on school voucher program? Is it a good program for Tennessee?
No, sir, it is not. It is taking public tax dollars. It is giving it to private schools. And if it's in the district we're in, most of those are religious-based private schools. It violates the separation of church and state. Now, I'm not against private schools, please don't get me wrong. But if you're a private school and you want to offer scholarships to children who otherwise could not afford them, please do. But don't use my tax dollars to send your child to private school. Let's properly fund our public schools so that we're not 46th in the nation for per student funding. The money is there. We also had a $250 million endowment created for mental health for children in schools. That has now, to my understanding, been paused, and the children would not have gotten the actual corpus of that endowment. They would have gotten the interest off of it statewide. We also need to expand that to cover mental health treatment for teachers, because teachers are suffering vicariously, seeing their children suffer in their classes. So no, sir, I am not in favor of vouchers for private schools.
Okay. And this, we'll start with you. You'll get the question first and going in alternating order. And this is about COVID. The numbers yesterday, according to the State Department of Health, 1,615 new cases of COVID in Tennessee. That was on Sunday. On Saturday, there were 1,192 cases reported by the state of COVID. So it seems like the perception is that we're relaxing and that COVID is going away, but these numbers just the last 2 days on Sunday and on Saturday don't seem to support that theory. Is the state doing enough to discourage the spread of coronavirus?
I don't believe it is. I think that we're all exhausted from COVID and the stress it's created, not on just our economy, but emotionally on everybody in the state. We're worn out. We're also taking it for granted that, okay, I haven't gotten it yet, or, oh, well, everybody's going to get it anyway. I might as well get it now. I've had COVID. I took precautions, but I got COVID. I fortunately was fairly much asymptomatic. I felt like I needed a good nap for 2 or 3 days, and that's it. I was very fortunate. But no, I believe that we still need to keep the mask mandate in place. And I know it's hard. It's very hard as Governor Lee, tries to do things, but I think he gets pressured sometimes and maybe, wields into that pressure. But we've got to keep going because we've got to overcome COVID.
Okay, Ms. Boland, the question to you, is the state doing enough to discourage the spread of COVID-19?
I certainly think they are, and particularly in allowing each county to have authority over the things that they're choosing to do in their counties. As you know, there are 7 counties in our Senate District 16. And in Senate District 16, there's a great disparity, difference demographically, but also in how many people have had it or not, and how they're treating it or not. And you can kind of look at South Dakota, the things that they didn't do in South Dakota, which they didn't do masks, they didn't mandate any shutdown of businesses, and everybody is pretty much at the same level. I truly believe that this was a weaponized virus that not only was weaponized biologically, it was weaponized for psychological fear and for the economy, to destroy our economy. So I think that as we believed everything we were told initially by the Communist Chinese, once America started treating this virus ourselves, we began to see other things that worked better. And now we know you don't immediately put someone on a ventilator. You don't immediately have to shut down. You don't have to wear a mask. You do need to do what Grandma said. You do need to say your prayers. You do need to wash your hands, and you do need to not kiss strangers. So we're going to make certain that we do practice social distancing, but we're not going to have that fear take hold of us as Americans. As we have found out those things that are actually working, we're going to pursue more of them. We're helping people get milder and milder cases. All viruses typically morph. It will have a life. It is a coronavirus. It will do what all coronaviruses have done. So right now we are getting a lot of young people have the cases that are showing up. Most of them are asymptomatic. And that's a good thing, because the herd immunity we've heard about for so long does take place. So I think that we are doing a lot, and we have learned a lot, and we are supporting each other more than ever.
James, if I could jump in. Senator, just here again for the sake of clarity, you said you think the coronavirus, the novel coronavirus, was weaponized. Are you saying by some hostile or adversarial actor, state actor, force, terrorist group?
Communist Chinese. It came, Wuhan was shut down last October. The people in Wuhan were not allowed to travel anywhere in China. They were allowed to travel internationally. They were allowed to come to America. They went to all the countries around the world. I wondered why Italy was such an outlier, was such a dramatic increase of cases there, until I found out that the Chinese had actually bought most of the fashion industry in Milan, Italy. And there's a direct flight to Wuhan. And January the 12th is the Lunar New Year celebration. A lot of the workers that are in those factories in Italy went home to Wuhan for that celebration. They came back, and there was a huge spike in Italy then. So we have learned things, and I don't think that anyone who studied Communist Chinese would think that they wouldn't be capable of doing this. I think that, too, in understanding, I was invited to and attended a national security forum a number of years ago. And one of the lessons that we learned was on the mind of the Asian versus the European type mindset. And balance is very important. Balance is in the eyes of the beholder. I think the Communist Chinese felt off balance with our president, who was changing a lot of the policies that were allowing them to control the economy of the United States of America. So I think that that lack of balance in their eyes gave way to what they've done. And I think that it's reprehensible, but I think that as believers in this United States of America, with some of the best medical care and some of the best minds, we have come to terms with it, and we now have more information than we had initially when we were all shut down back in late March.
Okay, we wasn't really expecting that discussion to come up, but
did you ask?
I asked. No, I did. I hadn't seen James's questions, but let's give Ms. Younglove maybe a couple of minutes if you'd like to chime in on that weaponized coronavirus.
I haven't seen any evidence of that either way. I hope it wasn't. I really don't know. But I know that now we've all got it, and we've got to deal with it. And that's not going to be an easy process. I think that we have to, excuse me, instead of, crying out so much that, well, it was this is a Chinese virus, they've done this to us, get over that and start working on a cure. Weaponized, I have no idea. I tend to think not. I usually don't buy into conspiracy theories. I attribute more to stupidity than I do to conspiracy. So I would have to say no. At this point, I don't see evidence of a conspiracy from China.
Okay, James, do you have another question? And then let's do this because we're running out of time.
Oh, no,
we'll have them
time.
to ask each other a question. Or do you
Well,
have one?
sure. I do have one more. Is that okay?
Sure.
One more
sure.
question?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about healthcare. Long before this pandemic, we used to actually talk about healthcare, didn't we? Once upon a time. But you had mentioned that most states pay 23% of their budget toward healthcare, and I believe, if I understood it correctly, you said Tennessee is 33% because we haven't expanded the Medicare program. So would you be in favor of expanding the Medicare program?
We've already expanded it when we went to TennCare, and I think that Governor Phil Bredesen did something that had to be done when he was governor, and our Medicaid had been wide open, and it was attracting people from other states. It was attracting all sorts of people coming in, and Medicaid was about to be the tail that was wagging the dog. It was about to eat our state's budget, literally. So right now, it is the #1 appropriation from our state with that mandate from the federal government, our portion of what we pay to Medicaid, and that is $12.9 billion that goes to a little over 1 million Tennesseans. So we are helping people. Now, we have asked for an ability to create our own rules with Medicaid so that it could be on a scale where some people would be able to get it with a little bit of a copay, and that would be very good. But right now, since COVID took place, a lot of things that were started have had to be put on hold.
Okay, Ms. Younglove, what are your thoughts on expanding the Medicaid program in Tennessee?
I'm in favor of it, and I'll tell you why. Medicaid expansion is covered at this point 90% by the federal government, and the remaining 10% is left up to the states. However, in Tennessee, the Hospital Association has said they will pay that other 10%. And the reason why is because we are having rural hospitals closed at an alarming rate in Tennessee. 14 have closed in the last decade. There are about 13 or 14 more on the chopping block right now. And you say, okay, how is this going to help us? We've got TennCare. Well, to qualify for TennCare, which is a state-funded Medicaid, you have to be at least 138% below the poverty level. With Medicaid expansion, you pick up where that left off, and you run it up for the working poor, basically. People who cannot afford private pay. So you've got a federal program that is also being supplemented by the Hospital Association, so we can bring it to Tennessee. And if we do adopt Medicaid expansion in this state, we will see about 300,000 citizens immediately get health care coverage and approximately 89,000 veterans. Now, we say veterans can go to the VA. Yes, they can, but they may have to wait 6 to 9 months to get in for their appointment. If you have Medicaid expansion that covers them, they can have a primary care physician right in our district so that they don't have to travel and be on this long waiting list. So why wouldn't we do that? And I have to say that Mrs. Bowling has voted against Medicaid expansion every single time it's come up.
Okay, James, we're at 7:29, and is it time to let our two candidates ask each other a question?
I believe so.
And we'll go, what order? Do we want to go in the alphabetical order?
Sure, sounds good to
Okay.
me.
I guess that goes to you, Senator Bowling.
In Tennessee, we've been looking a lot at abortion lately in laws that protect the right to life. where are you on abortion? Do you support abortion?
Abortion was never a choice for me. I'm very much pro-family. However, there is a big distinction in our country. People say, I'm pro-life, I'm pro-life. Democrats are pro-abortion. That's just not true. There's a big difference between anti-abortion and pro-life, okay? Let me explain what I mean about that. Anti-abortion just means I don't believe anybody should have an abortion, okay? Pro-life means, yes, I want you to have that child, but I also am willing to help you in ways, if you need my help, the state, being that actor, saying, I'm willing to help you with what you need to get you on your feet. Not a handout, but a leg up, okay? I am pro-family. Abortion was never for me. But as an attorney who took a sacred oath to uphold the laws of our nation and our state, I have to abide by the rules, regulations, and code that we have, and case law. And right now, that case law is controlled by Roe v. Wade.
Okay. We are at 7:30, and again, if you're watching on WCS-TV, the streaming live, or the Southern Standard's Facebook feed, this is the last event in the first session of the candidate forums in the lead up to the November 2020 election. Senator Janice Bowling, the Republican incumbent, and Sheila Younglove, the Democratic nominee and challenger. Let's go now to your question, Ms. Younglove, to Senator Bowling.
Okay, Senator Bowling, at the beginning of this year, you co-sponsored a delicensure bill that would have taken away the regulations for licensure on 27 different professions and would have also provided that whoever utilized people in those professions would sign a waiver of liability. And it went through 2 votes within the Senate. It went through 1 vote in the House before you tabled it to subcommittee. And we know that it can come out of subcommittee in one of 3 ways. My question to you, you wanted to take away the requirements for licensure for things like cosmetologists, barbers, funeral directors, embalmers, land surveyors, contractors, termite inspectors, termite treaters, anything really to do with building a house. So my question to you, and I know that at one point you had said that, well, they didn't understand what I was trying to do, and I didn't intend for it to go forward as it was written at that time. My question to you is, what part of that was a good idea?
Thank you so much for asking that question, because you couldn't be more wrong in what happened or what I did.
Then I'm wrong on, it went through 2 committee votes?
Excuse me. Those were not 2 committee votes. It had passed twice and it was going to committee. It never went to committee. But let me tell you what did happen. The chairman of GovOps had come and asked me to carry a bill with him that would look at licensures. Now, all the other professions, all professions with the exception of cosmetologists, have lobbyists, and they understand a caption bill when they see it. A caption bill is like opening your drawer to go through your socks and to see what, if you need to replace them or repair them or whatever. You're looking at a lot of things. Just a few years ago, we did look at licensure, and we found out that there was a license required for someone to work in a beauty shop to wash hair. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's a deterrent to a job. That's an entry-level job. But what the commissioner, the chairman of GovOps wanted to do was just to take another look at licensures. We were not going to remove any of those licenses, unless we found one in there that was similar to the beauty shop hair washer. So when I saw after 3 days that this was being misunderstood, and I understood why it was being misunderstood, because most people don't understand caption bills. They don't understand a lot of the things that go through the mechanics of it. But what I did was I withdrew the bill. Mm-hmm. I did not general sub the bill. When you withdraw a bill, it kills the bill. It has no companion in the Senate, so it's dead in the House. The bill was a moot point after 3 days when people saw it and became alarmed. I talked with them. I could tell they were not getting it, and that's fine. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Most cosmetologists, I was able to help them with the COVID issue to get the governor to allow local beauty shops and barbershops to open earlier than he had intended, because these are small businesses with designated customers who have used these beauticians for years, and this was something that needed to take place in our rural communities in particular, where we have a lot of folks who depend on that business. So I have a very good relationship with the cosmetologist, and for you to bring up something that was killed in February, I was so glad you brought it up tonight, because I did want to make that a public statement.
Okay, thank you all. Let's go in reverse order for our 2-minute closing statement. We're at 7:35 p.m. We're in overtime now, so 2 minutes, and Seth will operate the light tower over here. I should have called attention to that, but what is it? Green for go, yellow for your last 30 seconds. Okay. All right, Ms. Younglove.
As I said, I feel like I can offer more at the state level. I do want to help those that feel marginalized, disenfranchised, hopeless, helpless. More importantly, though, I want you to know that I know where I come from, and I will remember that. I will be working for you, okay? I've made phone calls to several people just to ask for their vote, ask them how they're doing, ask them what is of concern to them, and they're like, wait a minute, you're the candidate and you're calling me? This is weird. I was like, well, of course I'm applying for a job. Why wouldn't I call you? You will be my employer. Why wouldn't I call you? And it's just blown their minds. But I do want you to know, you matter to me. I see you and I hear you. I want to work for you. And I hope that when you go to the voting ballot, and please do exercise that right to vote, it's so important, particularly this year, that you will remember me and know that I will do absolutely everything in my power to help the citizens of our district. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Sheila Younglove. And 2 minutes for your closing statement, Senator Bowling.
Thank you all again for giving us this opportunity, and I want to thank the people of Senate District 16 and Warren County in particular here tonight for allowing me to serve you as your state senator. It's a responsibility that I take seriously every day of my life, and I think you all know when you first voted for me, I passed out this little card, and on it says my beliefs, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness based on our Constitution. So I'm pro-family, pro-life, pro-religion, pro-strong national defense, pro-voto ID to vote, pro-constitution, pro-private property. The choices we make with our liberty and our time that God has given us are our private properties, and they are sacred. Pro-amendment to prohibit a state income tax, and we got that passed. The pro-secure borders and pro-balanced budget, we are doing that. Tennessee is the most stable economic state in the nation, which is something that has really served us well during this time of uncertainty. Pro-jobs, pro-education, pro-right to work, pro-personal accountability and responsibility. We must unshackle entrepreneurs from overreaching government. I'm here to serve the working people of Tennessee, the farmers, those people that go to work every day to provide for their families. And I am pro-personal accountability that must allow for law and order. We have to get back to civility in our state. And so I just want to thank you for allowing me to serve, and I ask if you believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that you'll please join me, Janice Bowling, and vote for me, and give me your prayers, your support, and your vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Bowling. And let's show both of our candidates our appreciation. I think we had a very civil and productive discussion this evening. You engaged in the issues and talked about issues that are important to Tennesseans and voters of the 16th Senate District. So thanks to both of you. Early voting starts October 14. Is that right, James? Check me on that.
Yep, October the 14th through the 27th.
All right. Again, thanks to Susie Davenport, our Warren County Administrator of Elections. James Clark, thanks to you.
Always a pleasure to be here, Bill, and to give us a little plug for next week, it'll be the municipal candidates right here in this building, Monday at 6 p.m., and we'll also have the 2 candidates for the 1 open county commission seat.
There are 2 candidates for that uncompleted 5th District Warren County Commission seat. We have 3 candidates running for McMinnville Mayor, 8 candidates running to fill 3 slots on the Board of Mayor and Alderman. So we expect a very lively and interesting and maybe even entertaining session next week, October 12th, right here at the Warren County High School Auditorium. Again, thanks to James Clark, Joe Harvey, the director of WCS-TV for the television production this evening, also to the Southern Standard, streaming on Facebook, Seth Wright, our timekeeper, Connie Terry, who did great work in getting us set up for this event, Richard E. Myers, our sound engineer and chief station engineer and great volunteer at WCPI. This has been a voter education presentation of the Southern Standard and WCPI 91.3 in collaboration with WCS-TV, the Warren County School System's cable television outreach. For WCPI, the Southern Standard, and WCS-TV, this is Bill Zechman thanking you for joining us and bidding you a good evening.